It is my pleasure to introduce Professor Philippe Dessus from Grenoble University. He is one of our collaborators for many years. We first met in an European project, and we continued the research, collaboration research after this conference. Mihai had a co-tutel thesis. I was one of the advisors and Philippe was the other. And we wrote many papers together. He has a record, a very good record of research in education and in using artificial intelligence techniques in education.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for inviting me in this conference. I'm very glad and excited to be here, even at a distance. And as you said, I'm an educational researcher who is working in the application of artificial intelligence in some software applications and also places. And this talk is about the way to integrate context-aware classrooms or also intelligent classrooms as places for doing something like an automatic analysis of instructional events. So it's
Okay,
my title.
You have the screen.
Okay, so is it okay?
Yes, everything is okay. You have the screen and we'll.
Okay, so I can start, or you have something else to say, Stefan? Okay, can I start? No?
Yes, of course.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Thank you, Stefan. So in pandemic times, as you know, there were a large emergency remote instruction which took place, and this pandemic situation entailed a very fast and also large-scale implementation of remote instruction. But this remote instruction hindered some very important features of learning and instruction. For instance, the student learning per se, the student engagement, mood, and even students and teachers' privacy. So it's these problems are important, and we are questioning the way to reach a new normal situation in order to solve some of these problems. And from my point of view, smart classrooms can be a place to start with this new normal situation, because smart classrooms or also context-aware classrooms can be equipped with cameras and microphones to record and analyze instructional or learning events. And these places can allow different kinds of learning and teaching situation in presence, blended, hybrid, distant, and also can allow a finer analysis of the different instructional variable aspects. But up to now, there is no firm agreement on what a CAC is. For instance, you can read papers in which a single room with a single intelligent whiteboard can be named as a smart classroom. There are also very few comprehensive reviews about what smart classroom can be, and the theoretical underpinnings about smart classrooms are also very rare. So there is room to explore this role of smart classrooms in pandemic times, and also to explore their role for analyzing a bit more the way instruction and learning take place. So in this presentation, I will first define what a context-aware classroom is. I will present three main approaches using context-aware classroom in research and also education. I will also explore what different purposes the different kinds of context-aware classrooms can play. And at the end, I will present some important research questions about this topic, this contextual classrooms. So first, I have to define a bit more what these kind of places are and what are their role in education. So very simply, such a classroom can be any physical environment, for instance, university classes, rooms, in which instructional and learning events can occur. And there are, in these classrooms, ways to capture and analyze these events through thanks to different data capture and analysis. For instance, through the way of signal analysis and processes techniques, robotics, AI, and a large range of sensor controllers and effectors. So very simply, there are a lot of synonyms naming what smart classrooms are. For instance, ambient classrooms, ubiquitous, adaptive, intelligent, and so on. So there is a kind of messy situation about this kind of classroom, and this talk will, I hope, will refine a bit this situation. In my own university, we are just now launching a teaching lab project, which is very simply a university room in which you can see cameras that are recording with sound, with also microphones, and this information is gathered, is analyzed with machine learning techniques and then stored in secured servers. You can also see that you can have some robots that can also record some collective work of students in the room, and you can see also it's not so visible, but you can see that you can have some QR code that delimitate the different zones of interest, and that can be further analyzed by the systems. So this kind of room is up to now not fully functional. We are working hard in my university in order to have a fully functional room, but with the COVID times, it was very difficult to implement it. But hopefully, I think in the next, in a couple of months, the room will be fully functional. So if we want to collaborate with us in order to test some points, some research questions, you are welcome to do that. So email me, and it will be possible to do that. So more precisely, a contextual classroom is a kind of meta device in which a wide range of situations, either hybrid in presence or in distance, can be played, and we can analyze within this kind of classroom a large range of event features. For instance, diagnosing activities, people, emotions, performance, location, gaze, head directions, body posture, etc. So you can analyze a very large range of situations. That's why it's very important and in the educational domain. What is important to note too is that the first CACs were simply reactive to institutional events, aware of that, but more recently, more sophisticated ones allowed the supervision, the monitoring, and even the assessment of learning and instructional situations. So I will go further in this in the next section of this presentation. So one big problem about these rooms is that they have ears and eyes, and this can be hindering for students and teachers' privacy, as you may understand. So the recording analysis is enabled for all students and teachers at a pretty high frequency. That is, a lot of events can be recorded and stored, and this storage is also for maybe for an indeterminate time. So it's you can see that raises some problems in terms of people privacy. Another problem is that since the courses are played in very ordinary rooms, the students cannot easily opt out to be in the classroom. So it's kind of problem. It's difficult to put students who don't know who don't want to participate to a session. It's pretty difficult to put them elsewhere. And another problem is that it can raise sort of learning. That is, what's important is the first important thing is that students have to be present in the classroom, and this principle can foster behavior like lurking or cheating, and it's also a problem to be raised and also to be solved. In the third section of this talk, I will present you three main theoretical accounts in which we can study some instructional or learning events, behavior. The first is the simple behavioral approach in which a classroom is simply a place where individuals behave and react to stimuli. In that approach, the main argument is that very simple and isolated cues can be predetermined, analyzed, captured, and automatically analyzed to trigger some classroom reactions. Drone calls this a centralized model. In that situation, it entails a kind of behavior identification. It also raises a kind of surveillance and normalization of behaviors. This can be also a problem, as you can understand. And the students and teachers can be observed at a different range of behaviors. For instance, students, you can pinpoint some positive or negative behaviors of students. For instance, are they engaged? Are they following the course or not? And you can also give them some rewards of or punishments in order to let the negative behaviors extincting, for instance. For instance, a very well-known system, a well-known online system called Class Dojo gives to students something like that. That is, you can give students some badges in order to reward them or punish them if they don't behave as expected. From the teacher viewpoint, you can see that the classroom mainly recognize infers teacher's intentions or actions based on his or her behavior. And one of the very first smart classroom was this of Cooper Stokes and colleagues. And you can see in this classroom, when the teacher simply selects, points the laser at a seat, by doing that, this gesture is recognized by the system, and a view for the remote students is automatically selected. So you can see that the one very simple teacher's behavior can trigger one simple action from the system. So this is the first approach, kind of behavioral approach. The second approach, more complex one, is ecological approach, in which the classroom is an environment in which individuals and also devices, digital devices can be used, and individuals can be inserted in various perception action loops within the environment. So you have to understand in that the teachers and students are more free to perform very different kinds of actions, and the physical environment can guide and can constrain also individuals' behavior. In that kind of approach, the main argument is that the cues are not always predetermined by the system, but can emerge from the interaction of individuals or from individuals with the system. And I can cite a work from students from my lab, Isabelle Lamijo-Sarad, who studied the effect of the seats arrangement in classrooms, in secondary high school classrooms. And the setup is very simple. She let teachers wear a jacket with infrared spots, and she used also infrared cameras as a triangulation to detect the location of the teacher across the courses. And she studied two kinds of actually three, but I'm showing only two kinds of seats. Two kinds of seat arrangements. For instance, the arrangement in which you have tabled chairs, and also a kind of a separation between tables there, so the teacher can move, and you can see here the heat map of the teacher's locations across time. And in this kind of arrangement, you can see a very different kind of places of the teacher. The teacher is mostly in front of the classroom, and also moves across the central place of the classroom. So this kind of in this kind of information, you can see that the location is not predetermined. You can have this kind of setup to explore what are the ecological moves of the teachers or even students in the classroom. And Isabelle Lamijo-Sarad also took a very interesting analysis. This is a heat map showing the off-task behavior probability of students depending on two main variables. The first variable is the distance of the teacher from the students. So you can see that the off-task behavior is more likely to occur if the distance if the teacher's distance is more than 6 meters from the students. And you can also see that the duration of the location of the teacher is also important. So the off-task is more likely to occur if the teacher also took place near the students for more than 30 minutes. So in this situation, you can observe in a more ecological situation what are the behavior of the students and also the teacher. In the third approach is about inactivism, and in this approach you can see that the environment is considered as an emergent model in which the experience of the individuals in the classroom are considered as a first-person view of simply being here in the classroom. And in that model, we have to infer a large range of behavior, not only external behavior, but also perception, cognition, and also emotion. And these three kinds of events are intertwined with action. And so the main argument for this approach is to consider that what is to be a teacher in a classroom or students in a kind of first-person view. So in this approach, we set up an experiment some years ago. So this setup is not per se played in a smart classroom, because we only asked for elementary teachers, 2 novices teachers and 2 experienced, to wear single mobile eye trackers during math lessons. So there were not external cams. There were only these mobile eye trackers, but also microphones. And our research question was to report of which students, which pupils were most often gazed by the teachers, and which were the features, the characteristics of the students' profile. In terms of 2 kinds of data, the first was the academic performance of the students, and the second is the behavior of the students, good or compliant or not compliant behavior. So this is the main questions. And in this figure, you can see the percentage of teacher gaze toward the different students. You can see in abscissa the students' IDs for experienced teacher, for 1 experienced teacher and for 1 novice teacher. And what's important to understand is that you can see that the experienced teacher gazes at a larger number of students at a time than the novice can do. For instance, you can see that 6 different students can be gazed for an experienced teacher, whereas for a novice, she can only watch very precisely to 1 student. So this result, we think, is compliant with the expert view theory, in which an expert teacher or an expert, or also an expert whatever, for instance, an expert chess player, can consider in her environment, can perceive a chunk of something in order to take decisions. So an expert teacher can perceive a chunk of students and gaze at this chunk of students very intensively. It's more difficult for a novice. And in this second view, I can share you in abscissa, you have exactly the same range of students in the same order as previously. So in this part, you have the most gazed students and the less gazed at right. And you can see in that view the achievement score. So the higher is the better achievement, and here the behavior, and the higher is the better behavior too. So you can see that for an experienced teacher, the gaze of the students are for less achiever students and less behavior taker students. And you can see that for the novice teacher, the gaze is mostly at random. You cannot see that the more gaze students are also the less or the more achievers or behavior maker. So this is important also to say, because when we are experienced, you can diagnose what are the most important information to extract from the environment. And in this case, you can see that the most important information is to have an attention about the low achievers, or about the students that can have behavior with problems. So you can see this kind of first-person view. I think there are also were a more comprehensive view of inactivist classrooms. In that kind of research, I am citing here another piece of research which used multimodal deep learning models to predict two kinds of information that is extracted from a well-known observation system, human-based observation system, which is the classroom assessment scoring system. And which is important to take in mind is that very new models can extract image and auditory features from video course videos, and to automatically predict either positive climate of the classroom or negative climates. As you may see, the correlation with human scores is pretty high, of about 0.6 in terms of positive and negative climates, and this scores is very close to inter-agreement with human inter-agreement. And in that case, you can see it's not per se a first-person view, but in activist classrooms, you can also have an idea of the overall climate of the classroom. So in the first section of this keynote, I will present you some information more about what can CACs do for you, and very briefly, you can see that the main purpose of behavior-centered CACs is to do some demo, to do some teachers or student help. In that kind of case, you have the following assumptions. The teachers cannot pay attention to all the student behaviors, so you can have some facilities that can be embarked to help teachers follow attendees' action. And in that situation, you can have specific events that trigger a CAC reaction or analysis at a pretty low frequency. For instance, you can have a classroom that automatically check if a student is present or not in the classroom. So at the beginning of the classroom, there is some facial recognition that checks that if a student attends the classroom or not. The problem with this kind of behaviors is that only specific events can trigger actions, and there can have a large range of unexpected behavior that cannot be taken into account in this kind of classroom. The second CACs are ecological CACs, and in this case, you have mostly the role of monitoring something, monitoring events. And in this type, you have the following assumption that teachers and student behavior are contingent to each other in the environment, and the CAC is where attendees action take place. In that situation, we have more complex events that can be analyzed to characterize a bit more the relationships between attendees, and we can compare them to human coding at a mid-frequency. But in this kind of classrooms, a big problem is raised, and I will go further in this problem in the next section, is the question of, if we monitor the classroom, you are raising the surveillance problem, because lots of data are recorded and can be analyzed, and this is a problem because personal data can be computed. In the third types of CACs, the activist CACs, in this kind of CACs, I can assess the whole picture or a more personal picture. And in this kind of classrooms, the main assumptions is that the multimodality is important, because we can include a large range of physical measures to help analyze the first person view of attendees in classrooms. And it's important to see that in that type of classroom, the CAC is part of attendees action, and there are less clear-cut boundaries between the classroom and the attendees. And in that kind of classroom, the events are recorded at a high frequency and in a multimodal way. It's an important feature, but the problem is that it requires a very large variety of devices and very demanding analysis. Most frequently, deep learning processes are played in that kind of tasks. In the fifth part of my talk, I will raise some research questions about this kind of classrooms, and I will do that at 3 different levels. The most common levels is the classroom levels in considering the teachers and the students' view. I will go a bit deeper in showing you some microprocesses analysis, some cognitive processes, for instance. And I also will go at a higher level, considering how CACs could be used to have some smart universities, for instance, or to involve CACs in smart universities. So, for instance, at the lower level, at the lower level of my figure, how to capture or not capture the students' inner world. You can see that if you have to consider grasping something about the cognitive process of the students, it is both very interesting but also questioning, because so far the automatic recognition of students' engagement, interest, emotions, and so on is far below humans' performance. And a lot of people showed that, for instance, the automated recognition of emotions, of humans' emotion, is not so simple. But what's important is that other emotion researchers, for instance, show that what's important is to keep the emotion, to analyze the emotion within the context. And in so doing, using CACs is important, because in CACs, the emotion can be understood in the environment of the classroom. The problem also is that such analysis does not account for the question of gaming, because students can simulate an emotion or an interest, or the question of cheating, for instance. You may know that the question of proctoring, of the surveillance at the distance of exams or assessment protocols is not so simple, and this is an important question. And you can see also the next generation of generative deep learning, like GPT-3, raises also lots of questions in the domain of redundant assessment, because students can automatically generate very good essays. So teachers have themselves to adapt to students' practices, and students have also to change the context of the assessment, for instance. So I think for classrooms, for automatic classrooms, for smart classrooms, this is the same. The behavior of the students cannot be the same, so the teachers have to adapt themselves. At a higher steps, so at the level of the smart university, how to scale the CACs up. What's important to understand is that CACs cannot be considered as Russian dolls. That is, you can implement the different CACs at a bigger level, because a university cannot be smart in the sense a classroom does, simply because at a university level, you have far more complex social processes at stake. For instance, the question of territoriality, because the different classroom or places don't play the same role for students or people. You have also the question of crowding in the university, so it's far more complex to analyze. And the question of personal data in that environment is also crucial. Pertova, for instance, argued that even the weather can be considered a personal data if you cross the weather data with other more personal data. And simply put, weather can also be used to identify persons, which is a big problem, which is an important ethical problem, as you may know. And the question of the which data is also important. If you can say that at the classroom level data, you can be pretty sure that the data can be owned by teachers or students. At the university level, the data is not owned by teacher or students, but simply by the university. So this raises also bigger problems of data privacy. Concerning a step concerning teachers, the CACs can be used to arrange very different kinds of situations, and I think it's very interesting. For instance, you can have flexible places for hybrid teaching sessions. You can study, as I showed you with the work of Isabelle Lamijo-Sarad, you can test specific space arrangements and to see their effects on student achievement. So it's very interesting to do some research on that. You can also study very old concepts in teacher cognition. For instance, the concept of steering group, of Kuning steering groups, which considers that a teacher can gaze a specific group of students, as I showed you previously, in order to take some decision to go further in the lesson, or to repeat some important points if the teacher considers that some students did not understand something. And this kind of classroom can be also the place to record classroom videos for professional development purposes, and I think it's also a very good point. From the students' point of view, the main problem is that CACs can capture and analyze some data that are hidden to students, and even if visible, cannot be understandable very precisely by students. So what is raised here is the question of acceptability of CACs to students, and also to teachers as well, and the question of explainability of machine learning processes. And in my lab, we are developing some role-play sessions to help students and teachers understand what is at stake in CACs. For instance, you could have a session in which the teacher pretends that this room is equipped by cams and microphone. It's not the case, but you can imagine that. And the teacher could ask to students, what would it change for you in your behavior, and why? Is it the same for you, etc.? So you could set up some role-play session in order to understand the acceptability of this kind of smart classroom to students. But one important point is that in playing some smart classroom processes, you are using lots of processing power, a very huge processing power, and you have two paths. The first path is to use it for surveillance and analysis purposes, and the second path is to use part of this for obfuscation purposes, in order to make the data more private. And I think it's a very important and interesting path to explore. For instance, using deep learning processes to obfuscate by videos, for instance, and you can with the deep learning processes, you can use this power to do that. And as I may know, it's easier for images than for sound. It's more difficult to obfuscate the speech of the students, and then to delete the source information. The interest of that is that you can extract location. For instance, in the thesis I showed you previously, you only have the location of the teacher and no personal data as whole, as well. And also you can also use deep learning technique to generate some skeleton, some student skeletons, only get the head directions and also the general mood of the students. And you can see here a picture from Delhi Mini that can obfuscate and make the students not recognizable. And in my lab, we did some work on that, showing that it's possible only in extracting video features at a global level to have an idea of the mood and of the overall mood of the students, but not in analyzing it individually, only at a global level. So I think it's a very promising research path to do that, because the personal data is not in the data anymore. A latest question about that is that it's pretty obvious that the technology drives the CAC development, because day by day you have new techniques that can be used in order to trigger even more sophisticated processes. But one important point is to develop CACs in reflection with their pedagogical use, because pedagogy and technology are intertwined and no one drives the other one. And it's very important to keep this in mind and to get new tools and to get teachers to rethink teaching in the way and not at the end of the processes. So I have to go to the next and the final session part, the part session of this keynote, to give you some discussion points. The first is the simple recap of the situation. First, you have CACs that are very commonly used as at a behavioral and also ecological levels. You have more recently inactivist CACs that use deep learning techniques to assess a more personal view or more global view with very high frequency measures of classroom climates. Which what is important is to also to say that CACs can allow to explore ethics and also limits of AI, and people have to be acquainted to this kind of classrooms and to practice teaching and learning in this new meta device. But what is also to prove is that so far absolutely no effect of CAC on learning has been proven. So I think there is so far up to now there are lots of work to do in order to see to what extent this kind of CACs can be useful to foster learning, to foster student learning, for instance. At a more ethical viewpoint, you can see some points there. For instance, it's very difficult to have no value-free CAC, because you cannot have no value-free pedagogy, because education is value-laden. And it's important to have this in mind when you analyze classroom events. It's also very difficult to have metrics that can capture classroom climate as a whole. So it's important also not to marginalize human-based information. That is qualitative and human-based information is also important to characterize the classroom climate. And our idea is to blend automated and also human data in order to have a better view of what is at hand in the classroom. And the fourth latest point are borrowed from the very good book of Salganik, who presents 4 important guidelines in terms of ethics. The respect of persons in the classroom. I think it's very important to consider them as autonomous person and respecting their opinion and their wishes. You have also to do the beneficence, that is the benefits of using the classroom outweighs their risks. You have a kind of justice that is you have to compensate the problems of less abled or minorities attendees and not reinforce them. And also the question of transparency is very important. That is, explain very extensively which are the research goals and the method and the results too. In our lab, we also put some very simple guidelines of research in a kind of manifesto, and these four points are very important to us. The first is the question of anonymizing the data as soon as possible in the workflow, but not too soon, because in that case, information can be lost. You have also to globalize the representation of individual behaviors at the classroom level in order to do this anonymization. And the third point is to provide not to have too much online feedback, because online feedback is first cognitively demanding for teachers and also for students, and also entice some kind of supervision processes. So it's better to have delayed feedback. And the fourth point is also important, is that CACs can be used for empowering teachers and not for taking high-stake decisions at their places. And in the latest slide of my talk, I will show, I will go back to the pandemic new normal situation. And to my opinion, I can I can say that CACs can be a place for more ecologically sound situation that can allow very large range of instructional situation, hybrid, in presence, or distant learning or teaching. We can have more flexible devices to develop this situation. We can also have more context-aware software to help students learn. And at the end, we can also foster in-depth teacher reflection on their practices. And for instance, showing what it's like to be a teacher. And I think this question is very important, notably for novices, for novice teachers. So that's it. Thank you for your attention, and I will be happy to answer some questions. I have put there some information about the way to have these slides, but I guess this slide could be also on the website of the SLERD conference. I think my chapter in the SLERD proceedings will be available one day. I have also to thank my colleagues with which I did this research, and also thank my research funding. and also the references I cited are in the next slide of this presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much also, Philippe, for the very interesting presentation.
Thank you.
So please, questions, comments?
Thank you for a wonderful presentation. I would definitely like to start establishing the one COG in Estonia. So I would definitely contact you later.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. As a potential holder of SLERD, next year's SLERD, we want to impress you with our COG. We are building together.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
But now the questions or notices. I was following really carefully the presentation, and first I started thinking about this proximity, this infrared stuff. And currently, I use in my research telepresence robots, and they are not warm. So the same question about whether there are proximity between people influencing the teacher-student relationship is influenced, by your body warmth. But also, another thing I started thinking that what did COVID to us as teachers, that we used to not move anymore. And now when we are back in hybrid classes, we have the equipment, the cameras following us, but we don't move. We just sit here. And that's also something that we have to once again reconsider our teaching practices, because we don't move. And last but not least, we can't measure the gaze when we have Zoom students. So currently, it seemed to me that this COG you were presented, it's more related to the physical classroom, not the hybrid classroom. And also, I just wanted to point out or ask that that in hybrid classrooms, the students are not equal. And especially if we try to apply multimodal learning analytics devices, even if we are able to send the heartbeat monitors to home, let's assume it's possible, but they still don't have the same environment, and the environment influences us. So my question is, although these COGs are so promising, and as I promised, I want to build one as soon as possible, do you think that they make any sense in the hybrid context, as the learning situation is so different? And last but not least, I would want to point out that whether we should research where is the action happens or where is the learning happens. So I hope you find something to discuss. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much for your question. The question you are raising are very important, and I'm not sure to have all the question about them, but I can elaborate a bit more on them. You are right. You are totally right. I agree with you. It's the questions I have raised are mostly centered on the physical with the in-presence teachings with physical rooms. But for the hybrid and the distance situation is a bit more tricky, because the context in which the different students are very different, and in terms of analysis and data capture, these are not the same data to be captured, and this can be a different context for the students. So I totally agree with you about that, but you can have some, for instance, you can also have cameras, fixed eye tracker. You can have a mobile eye tracker, but you can also have screen-based eye tracker that can also analyze the eye direction of the students on the screen, and this information can be also interesting to be analyzed. The question of camera moving within the room is not a problem, because the cams we use in our project don't move. They are fixed at a place, and we can move them, but ordinarily we put them at a fixed situation, and they don't move in order to record some people or another one. So I think this question of using CACs to record hybrid situation is a bit more complex than for in present situation. So in Grenoble, our research goal is first to be able to have interesting in present situation, and in a second time do some setups with a hybrid situation, but only in the second time. So I will be pleased to collaborate with you if you want, in order to discuss further on that situations. It will be great to do that. Thank you.
Thank you for the interesting question and answer. So it's my pleasure to now invite Carlo to speak. In fact, Carlo, maybe you could say also something about, in general, about the conference. You know, all of you know that Carlo is father.
I have just a couple of comment questions, let's say. The first one has to do with globalizing. It's I understand perfectly the problem that arises with privacy, but let me say that in general it's quite funny that from one side, I mean from the pedagogical side, we pretend to personalize more and more the learning process. On the other hand, we are very worried about globalizing the data. That actually does not fit with the goal to personalize as much as possible the learning process. So this is the first point that I would like you comment about. The second one is, well, I would like to come back to the, let's say, the payback in terms of learning and pedagogy with respect to the effort that you will develop on the technological side. And I can understand quite well that this effort may provide you information about the climate of the class, that's for sure. But and I think that from what you say, that probably this sort of technological setting is very useful, could be very useful for, let's say, professional training. So, for example, if you put people in an environment, a simulation of an office, a company or whatever, and then you observe what the people is doing. I also understand that this can be very useful in, for example, primary school. So, or even the kindergarten, where you have really to understand how the kids interact between them, because this is very important from they grow. It's much less clear to me which could be the advantage in, for example, in university classroom. So that's the two common questions on which I ask you to elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Carlo. That are very interesting questions. Thank you. About the first question, the trade-off, the balance between globalizing and personalizing, I think it's a very important question. And in our lab, we chose to globalize instead of to personalize, because the question of personalization is a bit, it's too tricky for us, and maybe also too dangerous. You can recall the experience of the alt school. Maybe you know the Google guy in the 2010 set up a company which was called the alt school company. Do you know this kind of company? And the alt school company, the goal of the alt school company was to put some smart classroom everywhere in high school and middle schools too, and to provide apps to students and also to parents, and parents can spy at every time their students, their daughter or son's activity, and this kind of very intensive personalization processes did not work, because the parents, notably the parents, but you can guess that for students it will be the same, because for parents it's more, it was too, the personalization process was instead a spying process, and so the alt school closed, all the alt schools closed in the late 2010. So instead of doing a very intensive personalization, which I consider it pretty harmful, because for instance, I'm not a big fan of dashboards, because for teachers, dashboards are if you have dashboards that considers the activity of each student, it's very cognitively demanding for teachers to get pretty good information from dashboards, because you have too much information. So our research path in my lab is rather to have a kind of globalizing approach, which is first more privacy compliant, and second, also more efficient for teachers to manage and to have and to take decision. That's the first question. And about your second question, about the way to capture classroom climate, I agree with you. This information is pretty easier to obtain for instance, primary or secondary classroom, and not so easy to have for higher education classroom. And what you say is right. And in our research, we also converge with that opinion, because simply put, higher education situations are far more difficult to observe and to analyze, because the content by itself is far more difficult to analyze and to understand. Because, for instance, if you have a course of advanced mathematics, you can have some idea about the teacher-students interactions, but it's very difficult to have a more precise idea of what is at hand in the classroom, because maybe you cannot understand anything about the math and the content, the pedagogical content knowledge of the situation. So I think it's a barrier. It's a very important barrier to have, and this barrier is also content related. So and also I agree with you that this kind of videos are very useful for teacher development processes. And for instance, I think it's a very good idea to have, for instance, first-person robots that can record the situation at students level or at teacher level, in order to have videos that can be played for novice teachers. And the idea behind is to have a video that can be used to make teachers, novice teachers, understand what is to be a teacher, what kind of experience you can have when you have a teacher. And maybe I think it's a very important experience to have in order for a teacher to choose the right profession. Okay, thank you, Carol.